Thank you. This is such an amazing crowd. So many people from the whole of Germany. I can't believe it. Like, there are very few countries in the world that can get so many people for a demonstration, and I don't know any country that can get so many for a demonstration against a free trade agreement. Congratulations. This is stunning. And people around the world are inspired by the size of your demonstration here today and in Berlin last year. When the news of the size of the Berlin demonstration against TTIP last year came out, I sent it to all the campaigns around the world fighting these same neoliberal trade agreements to give them hope, to give them inspiration, and so that they can learn from what you can do here in Germany. It's fantastic. And today, 90,000 people in a town of 500,000 people must be some kind of world record. I'm so impressed. I will definitely be sending the photos and the news from this demonstration to all the other campaigns so they can learn from you. Because CETA and TTIP are not just bad for Canada and Europe and the US, but they also harm developing countries. And we know that the European Commission wants these same CETA and TTIP rules to be imposed on developing countries like Mexico and Chile. They are bad enough for you guys, imagine for developing countries. For example, in CETA, it restricts the ability of governments to regulate services. So if you want to pass new laws or change your existing laws on services, this can be prevented. This is even worse for developing countries because they don't yet have all the laws they need, like on pollution. The CETA rules on services can stop governments from setting a maximum price for essential services to keep them affordable, like electricity. Poor people in developing countries cannot afford electricity even today. They need the government to be able to set affordable prices, but this can be prevented by agreements like CETA. CETA can stop governments from charging high taxes or licensing fees for things they don't want, like cigarette shops, to help them cross-subsidise for healthcare for smokers or to discourage them. And these same rules, and even worse, broader in their scope, are also coming in the Trade and Services Agreement. And I see some of the signs out there are also no to TISA, because the EU is negotiating TISA as well. And in addition to all those things, the US, of course, wants to lock in their ability to spy on your data the way that Snowden showed the NSA was doing. This is what the US has proposed in TISA. And the European Commission, on behalf of you, has proposed a safeguard that doesn't work. That's all they've asked for. So your privacy is going under TISA. It's a shame. The US has no shame. They were caught out for spying, and now they have no shame in locking in the ability to continue spying in the same way. But it's not just on services. Of course, CETA also has longer monopolies on medicines, so that medicines can cost $500,000 US for each patient every year of their life. This is what the European Commission wants to force patients in developing countries to pay, countries like Mexico and Chile, for more years. And people can't afford those prices here, and they can't afford them in developing countries. It's a shame. But the EU is not happy with that. The European Commission is also saying that CETA and TTIP is the model for their trade agreement negotiations with other developing countries. And they even want to put it in the World Trade Organization, where it would apply to 160 countries. And these are the rules you've heard about. ISDS, which we know has successfully challenged laws in developed countries and developing countries, health laws, tax laws, anti-corruption laws, environment laws, even when they are to comply with an environmental treaty. These have all lost to ISDS. And now the investors are challenging the bans on fracking, the health warning labels on cigarettes, Germany's phase out of nuclear power. They could even sue about your fixed price books. And of course, as you heard, when governments lose, they have to pay billions of dollars. And for developing countries, this is even harder to afford. When Ecuador lost and they had to pay the American oil company who broke their law $2.4 billion US, pay the lawbreaker, that was half their health budget, gone, in one case, to pay a law-breaking foreign oil company. And this is a shame. And this is what the European Union has just negotiated in the free trade agreement with Vietnam that they want to go through the European Parliament. This is Vietnam, where 43% of the people live on less than $2 a day, where they can't even afford to pay for their medicines today. How can they afford a European free trade agreement like this CETA and TTIP, which is already being negotiated, concluded, and about to go through the Parliament here? So these CETA restrictions and these ISDS provisions, the EU is negotiating with developing countries in Asia, Latin America, Africa, Pacific, and if they put them in the WTO, that would even apply to the world's poorest countries, the least developed countries, where people live on $250 a year. Can they afford this? So what happens next? If CETA and TTIP go through, then it also means that developing countries can export less to Canada, Europe, and the US. So a possible income drop of 7.4%, according to some studies. But we don't see that Canada or Europe or the US are going to compensate developing countries for this. But what we do know is that when they've tried to negotiate these kinds of agreements before, the multilateral agreement on investment, the anti-counterfeiting trade agreement, they were defeated by the people here in Europe. You all defeated these agreements in the past, and I think you can do it again with CETA and with TTIP, because we need you to do it. We in the developing countries need you to stop CETA and TTIP because of the harm they can do to the developing countries as well. So we are so grateful to you all for being here to give such a clear message to Obama and Merkel tomorrow. Stop TTIP, stop CETA. Thank you. Dankeschön.